You have arrived at a fatherhood-centric channel. Here, real dads share their stories about what it's like to be a husband and a father. We can talk about anything we want as long as we can connect it to fatherhood. I created this channel because I find it absolutely heartbreaking that millions of children are growing up without their dads at home. And I believe that these conversations will help the men that are listening remain in the lives of their children. So, before we get started with the conversation, I want to ask you for 3 things, please. 1, subscribe. 2, share the content. And 3, if you want to have a conversation with me, write to dadnasium@gmail.com. All right, so let's get started, right?
Sounds good.
All right, awesome. All right, Mike, thank you for having this conversation with me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
So we'll start. Well, where should we start? Where would you like to start? We can talk about, well, perhaps we should begin with how many children you have and then launch.
All right. I have 2 daughters, a 10-year-old and a 6-year-old.
Nice.
Growing up,
Daughters.
I had 2 brothers. My father had 3 sons. Always wanted to have a daughter. Never had one. I was the last of 3 boys. We had a couple of, stepdaughters, so to speak, being a Spanish family. I don't know how your Spanish family was, but with ours, if you hung around long enough, you became a sister, became a brother, became an uncle. So, we had a couple of cousins that lived with us for a while that we ended up calling them sisters. So he did raise daughters as well, but of his own, he had 3 boys. Out of his 3 boys, we gave him 8 granddaughters.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So let me, huh?
I'll say he always wanted a girl, and he got 8 granddaughters. So.
Wow. Yeah. So let me tell you. So I have 2 boys, but I was always very afraid of having daughters because I was very afraid of falling in love with them. Now, so here's the thing. I love my wife, yeah, but I don't think it's the same kind of love that a father might have for his daughter, and I was afraid of that. What do you think about that?
I could definitely see that. I could definitely see that. I recently, well, not recently, but I've tried to make it because that's probably exactly what happened to me. For a long time, I would come home, and my daughters would be the first one to get my attention. And I want to say within the past 5 years or so, I really started diving into different books, listening to different podcasts, just trying to get a better feel to become a better person, a better man, father, husband, etc. And what I started to realize was my wife should be getting the first attention of mine as I come through the door. Like, my kids need to see, me love my wife before they see me love them. I always took it as the way I treat my daughters is the way they will set the bar for a man to treat them. And that might be the case, but I think it goes further than that. I think it's more they need to see the way I treat their mother. So I try to make it more of a point, and I think that's exactly what it is. I think you fall so in love with these little girls, and my 10-year-old now, not so much, but you walk through the door and they come running to you like you're the greatest thing in their world. I'm sure sons are very similar, but you get so caught up with that love from the little girls. And but like I said, my daughter's 10, so I could be home for an hour and she won't even come downstairs to see if I'm got all my limbs on me. But yeah, so I try now. I realized what I was doing, and I try more so now, to give more the attention towards my wife, because it's important for the kids to see that relationship.
Yeah, man, that is fantastic. And in all the conversations that I have had so far, you're the first person to say that, and I think it is so absolutely spot on and intelligent, and I'm happy that you've been able to take that information and then act on it, modify your behaviors so that you so that you first take care of your wife, um, because yeah, at the end of the day, what if you don't, right? Like, so what if you do it the other way? What if you begin to ignore your wife over your daughters? Um, what happens to the family then?
Yeah. Yeah, no, it definitely loses some of its strength.
Yeah, yeah. That must be it, right? It loses some of its strength because ultimately, who are the leaders, in your within your family, who are leading, who are making the big decisions? It's certainly not the daughters, not the children.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I remember I watched one of your videos you did recently about how every time you took a picture, your son was looking up at you, and that also made me think about it too. It's like they see everything we do. If they see us eating right, doing this, doing that, and they're gonna model their relationships off of the relationships they see. You know, so I think it's important to show it at home. I mean, you can see it on the TV. They have a lot of great relationships on TV with the mothers and the fathers and the kids, and some of the shows we watch. But I think it's more important that they see it at home, in person. One of the things that I do struggle with, and I'm trying to change it a little bit now because I think it might be important for them. Um, and now, I mean, I think it's good for them to see as well. Yeah, we love each other, we're getting along, but I think it's important also for them to see some of the disagreements every now and then. For a long time, we didn't do any type of disagreeing at all in front of the kids. Like nothing, like no fighting, no nothing. I mean, we don't really fight that much, and it's never a bad fight. But lately, more and more, I try to have little conversations, not anything serious. Like let's say, perfect example. Last night, my wife wanted to rearrange this whole basement that I'm sitting in, and I had recently, and I say recently, like a year ago, rearranged everything, dry locked all the walls, asked her how she wanted it. She gave me no input, so I set it up. So last night when she asked me to move it, initially I was annoyed. And, we had that little back and forth right in front of the kids. And obviously I came down and I moved everything because that's, what dads do,
Yeah,
husbands do. But I thought it was important for them to see, oh, okay, it's all right if you don't get along and you fix it. Like that's also very important to show them that conflict and the conflict resolution behind it.
yeah, yeah, Mike. Fantastic, man. I love it. I love it. I love that you're saying it. You're spot on, man. You're 100%. You're 100% that we have to model. And the cool thing is that you've become self-aware. So now when you're having these discussions, you're thinking you're thinking ahead of what you're about to say. Yeah, you may be annoyed, but you're also thinking, how is this argument being received by my daughters, right? And what's really cool is that you are thinking like so far ahead into the future. I find it to be absolutely important, meaning that not only are they seeing how mom and dad interact, but yeah, you're right. Each one of your daughters is going to model their relationship with their future husbands. We're talking about 15 to 20 years from now, when they start feeling like they're getting serious with somebody, they're going to expect that their arguments are going to go the way that your arguments have gone with your wife.
Yeah,
That's huge. And I'm going to give you. I mean, I think this is going to blow your mind. My wife's parents did the complete opposite. They thought that the answer was, instead of arguing in front of their daughters, to never argue in front of their daughters. So my wife, I'm highly confrontational, and not in a bad way. It's just that if I think that there's a disagreement, I got to talk about it. I got to bring it up. It's got to be addressed. I don't want to let it slide or let it go or wait. No, it's got to be. I'm done with it. I just want to be done with it. And so when we got shortly after we got married, she would panic whenever I would begin these arguments because she thought, couples don't argue.
Yep.
Married. This is my adult new wife thought. that married couples don't fight,
Yeah.
right? And this is why it's so awesome that what you're doing, what you're doing, because it makes total sense. It makes total sense. But I mean, you're also teaching conflict resolution. So it's not just, oh yeah, okay, mom and dad argue, people argue. No, they argue because they disagree on a point, and then they figure it out and they continue. So there is, post the argument, there is still love. So there was love before, there was argument and disagreement, and then there's love again. No love is lost because you disagree.
Exactly. Exactly. They need to see that. They need to see complete transparency with everything, because then it sets unrealistic expectations.
Otherwise, it sets unrealistic expectations. That's right. That's right. And you're
Yeah, that's always one
harming.
of my. Yeah, you do more harm than good. That's always one of my. Whenever I meet new parents, I get a couple of friends of mine when they recently that the first thing is, Mike, you have any advice? And I tell them, listen, the first thing I'm gonna tell you is kids are not easy. Like they don't like you from the beginning. They cry for no reason. They're up all night. Like you could hold them, you could feed them, you could change them, and they're not gonna be happy. And people are like, bro, you make it sound terrible. I'm like, no, but these are the realizations of it. A lot of people don't like to admit it, at least in my experience. They don't like to admit, oh, I can't get my baby to sleep. I can't get my baby to stop crying, because they feel like it's a knock on their abilities to be a parent. And so, a lot, and that was one of the issues my wife had when we first had our kids, and maybe a little bit of hormonal changes, but that was her thing. She was never around kids, so she was very upset of, why can't I get them to stop crying? What am I doing wrong? And so that's why I try to make it a point to just be completely open with everybody. Like, no, my kids didn't nap. They cried a lot. They fussed a lot. And same concept is that complete transparency to not just show the highlight reels, but let them see the real life.
Yeah. People want the highlight reels. They really do. It's one of the reasons why I think that this channel is so absolutely important. And I hope that you are the beginning of the beginning of a trend of fathers coming on the show, on the conversation, and saying the things that are what's the term I'm looking for, that most people don't think that they should be saying, right? Like like the dark side of fatherhood. I tell you, most people want to focus on, oh, everything's so great, she's doing so wonderful, he's doing so great, he loves me, he kisses me, I tell her I love her, she tells me she loves me all the time, and yeah, that's cool, man. The wonderful stuff is wonderful, but we are not helping each other if we don't share with each other the things that are bothering us, right?
That's where you grow. You grow from the hard parts, not from the easy parts.
That's where you grow. Yeah. So I think that the conversations could as easily be about, he's such a little dick, he's like, he's so rude to me. Like, like the other day, I'm going to share this story. One of my kids, I go to one of my kids, I reprimanded him for something, right? And he goes, who cares? Oh man, I was fuming. I saw red. I didn't know what to do with myself, right? So this is a 12-year-old that just told me, who cares? And I just didn't know what to do with myself. I really literally, my head exploded all over the room. And it took me quite a bit to calm down, because my thinking was, dude, I literally do everything for you. I literally, yep. Your entire room setup is because I exist. Your gaming world in which you exist, so much of your time exists because of me. I make it all happen. And I'm asking you for this one little thing. It means something to me. It doesn't have to mean anything to you. That's okay, fine. Yeah, it doesn't mean zero. It means zero to you. But just do it because I'm asking. Because look at what a sweet deal you have right now because of me. You've never even asked me for any of it, but I set it up because I knew that you would love it. But stories like that, like you were saying, they cry, they're difficult. Yeah, like you said, giving advice to people about children is don't have any because because it's because it's so hard. You know, it's so difficult. But there's the good stuff, right?
No, there's a ton of good stuff. Ton of good stuff. I mean, it's one of the hardest and most rewarding jobs I've ever had in my life.
And this, yeah. Go ahead.
And I say that all the time. That the title of a dad is probably the best title I ever have ever. You know.
This is why I always say, for years I've been saying it's such a missed opportunity for so many men who are physically present but emotionally absent, or completely physically and emotionally absent from their children's lives. Not only are they ignoring their responsibility, but they're missing out on this opportunity to grow. Because I mean, I think about, well, so like share, like share a little. How are you different and how are you better, right? I wonder how often you think about that, if you have an answer for this.
Well, you know what? Well, one of the things that I've adopted recently, and don't get me wrong, in the beginning years, I was like most men. You know, I got caught up with my work. I'm a mechanic, and my career just started excelling at that point. I was getting accolades. I was, being asked to become shop foreman and run shops, and I did let it consume me. It was very hard not to. But now I kind of, like I said, within the past few years, with the reading and the podcast and everything, I mean, now there's so much information out there that old saying of, we did the best we could, that's all we knew. I don't think anybody could use that anymore. Like, there's so much information out there. If you feel you're not doing enough, open up a book, listen to a podcast. If you don't like to read, there's so much information out there. So, one of the things that I'm very proud of, and only because I see the list and I'm the only father on it, I'm actually a class parent, which is, I don't know if you know, is a predominantly mother-ruled world. One that was not easy for me to be accepted into when I first signed on. But I love it. You get to meet the kids' friends in a different setting. You get to see them in their classrooms, and it's a total separate side that otherwise you won't see. Because normally, I don't know about you, but I ask my kids, how was school? Good. And that's it, they're gone. So that part of it I like. What I've kind of tried to do now with the way everything is with the corona and the lockdown and the isolation, no matter how tired I am when I come home from work, if the kids ask me, Dad, let's do such and such, unless I physically can't, I will never say no.
Yeah.
It's just, because like you said, you have to be present and not just there. You can't just be sitting there watching TV with them while you're scrolling on your phone, but you have to be present with them, doing something, and it's, and the other thing is too, is the time moves by so quickly. 1 minute you have this little baby that you're holding, keeping you up all night. And then, like I said, you have a 10-year-old that don't even want to say hi to you. Also, it's, it's tough to see the change, but it's nice to kind of, see how the relationship changes as they age.
Yeah.
And unless you're around, you're not going to see that.
Yeah. What is that, Mike? What is it that you're describing? You're talking about a guy. So you're talking about Mike before. Yeah. Hold on. You're talking about Mike before commitment, right? Mike before commitment was focused on himself and his work also paid the bills, right? I mean, okay. But clearly there were two jobs that were important. One is the one that you had to go to every day to pay the bills. But then also from my point of view, the other job that's also important is, well, you have two additional jobs at home, right? Because these are people that you brought in. So the question I've always asked is, why would you bring these people to this world if you're not going to be around, if you're not going to be there for them? So it's like, so wait a minute. So it's right. So that from my point, it's like you're going to go to work and take care of that, but this is also your work and your job. Why are you not taking care of this? Is my thinking. But then you say, But then one day you say, I'm going to make it, because it was a conscious, it sounds like a conscious decision. You said that you were now going to be more present. What set that off?
You know what? I really couldn't tell you. I mean, I was always, when I was around, I was present. Um, but I wasn't always around. The job would take me sometimes 60, 70 hours out of the house. One job was about 45 minutes away. So, I mean, by the time I got home, sometimes it was bath and bed. And I'm not really quite sure where the shift went. It might have just been, you know, you kind of realize, actually, you know what? Maybe I do. At 30, I tore my ACL, my right ACL. And then again at 35, I tore my left ACL. Both times, there was nobody here but my wife and my kids. My job wasn't here looking after me. My boss wasn't calling me to see how I was doing. And I guess that's kind of when I started to realize, and that's also when the shift happened, when I started reading more books, started opening up different books and getting different ideas and changing my perspective on things. Because you start to realize that, you know what, at the end of the day, when everything is all said and done, the people who are going to be there are going to be the people that love you, your wife, your kids, your family. And if you neglect them, you're not going to have anything there. It's going to be you alone. And, like they say, when you get older, everybody always says, I wish I had more time to spend with my family. Nobody ever says, I wish I worked more. I wish I would have took that promotion. It's always, I wish I spent more time with my family. So I think that's what it was. I think once, I had some rough spots, but through it all, my wife and my kids were always there.
No one ever says, I wish I had worked more.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't think so, man.
Yeah, I very much doubt it. And if they did, they were misguided.
I mean, I'm sure I would imagine, I don't know, statistically, and this is a pure hypothetical guess, a tiny, tiny fraction of the population is so absolutely obsessed with work that they might have it might be able to say that, but I would imagine that the vast majority of the population does regret one thing at some point, maybe on their deathbed, and that would be that they wish that they had spent more time with their children.
Yeah.
With their loved ones, I mean, in this case, we're talking about the children. So very cool, man. Well, I'm happy for you, man. I'm happy that you were able to transition. I'm 100% certain that your daughters loved that you did.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Oh, there's no doubt about it. There's no doubt about it. All the research shows, that all children, boys and girls, have this, they want their dads. All of the research shows it. They want their dads, and you hear it all the time. You hear it with adult male, even with adults. If you ask anyone about their relationship with their fathers as an adult, it could be somebody in their 40s or 50s. Who froze? Oh, you froze a little bit. So if you ask anyone in their 40s or 50s, even 60 years old, somebody like, I know this guy, he's 72. He still talks about his dad and, he was a drunk, right? And like, not a great dad, and you never forget, man. You just, something that I spend a lot of time, talking to people about this and about, children's relationship with their parents. You were talking about that that story about the picture of my son looking up at me. Children want their parents to be right. Children expect their parents to be there and caring and loving. And that's why it's so hard when a father isn't, when a father is maybe distant, emotionally distant or abusive. It's very confusing for children because they cannot understand how this man, how can he love me and still do this to me? It's extremely confusing. And that you carry that with you forever until you die. So, to hear you say that you one day decided that you were going to self-educate and to hear you say that, look, now there's no reason why I shouldn't know something X about my children or myself or our relationships. It's all out there. You just have to go looking for it. I mean, it's absolutely great for you and for your entire family that you've been able to figure that out, that you can self-educate, that you can change and improve.
I mean, and the idea is to always try to improve. No matter what they always say you don't know what you don't know. So there could be something else out there that you're missing. That's why I'm always listening to new things and always reading new things. Like I said, this thing with making sure when I come home, my wife being the first one I greet. That I heard that, I want to say within the past 2 months, and I was like, that makes a lot of sense. It's just there's so much out there.
There is tons out there, but I love that one. If anyone listening to this, if they only get one thing out of this whole conversation, and that is to first mom, then kids, done, Mike. This conversation will have helped. I mean, by extension, who knows how many hundreds of people. Meaning that if you change the attitude of one man right now on that, right, so that he from this day going forward, he greets his wife first, shows her affection, and the children see this. That means that those children are going to now embrace that behavior because it's been modeled properly. It makes sense, and they themselves are going to do it with their wives. Very cool. Yeah, you mentioned that knowing what you don't know. This is sort of in my life for a number of years, that idea about not you don't know what you don't know has been for a number of years like a recurring theme, and you just arrived at the answer to how to know what you don't know, and the answer is through reading. Well, reading or absorbing information, from in whatever media, meaning that there are just tens of thousands of authors out there writing tons. I mean, just like an infinite amount of stuff that we're not aware of. So when we say, well, you don't know what you don't know, but there's ways to sort of try to get to know those things. And that is by like if you're somebody who doesn't like to read physically with a book, you just can't do it. You hated it from the beginning since you were a kid. Audible has, oh my God, what, hundreds of thousands of audiobooks. It's very inexpensive to listen to an audiobook, and you can do that all the time. I mean, so easily. And then what's cool about it is that you have like you can listen to anything, and I just want to spend just one more second on this. Our local library, I don't know if you knew this, you don't even have to pay for Audible, because Audible costs, right? That's it. There's I think a yearly subscription or whatever. But if you go to your local library and get your library card, you can then download on your phone an application that allows you to enter the library card number onto it, and you can borrow free books from the library as you would regular books, right? And then what's great about it is, well, one, they're free. Two is you have hundreds of options, and it also really neat is you don't have to go to the library to pick it up. You can just use your phone. And two is when it expires in like 9 days, I think that's what I seem to remember. On the 9th day, it goes away. You never have it. No more late fees. No more like, oh man, I gotta go. It's Sunday night and I'm already in bed, but I gotta go return the stupid book, right? It returns itself, and you can have on this particular application, you can have up to like 5 books. So you don't even have to commit to a single book or reading the entire thing. You could just 3 chapters, I'm done. Next book, 3 chapters, I'm done. I mean, like you said, today there's the idea that you cannot teach an old dog a new trick is just absurd.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely agree. Yeah, my thing I like to listen to different podcasts, which is a similar format to this. It's normally two guys, and they just shoot ideas back and forth. I just love hearing different people's perspectives on things because a lot of times, one of the things I always tell to a lot of people is that the only thing you can ever change in this world is how you react to a certain situation. So no matter how much I want to say, I need to change my kids, I need to change my wife, I need to change my boss, from like, you have no control over any of that. It's all a matter of how you perceive it and how you react towards it. So it's good to get different, perspectives just from regular, everyday guys like you and me sitting down, talking, giving different ideas. You know, a lot of times with the, like, I love the books. But a lot of the books are written by quote unquote professionals. They're therapists, psychiatrists, or doctors. Guys who've been in the field, and they're fantastic ideas. Don't get me wrong; they're beautiful ideas. I have every other day I'm buying a new book. I have 6 books that I haven't even read yet. But it's also definitely nice to get the perspective of the everyday guy. You
Yeah,
know, I don't even listen to music anymore when I'm driving. I want, I drive to work. It's strictly, podcast.
yeah, yeah. Because your life and the life of everyone around you improves immediately after you do that.
Yep.
Yeah. So I think you've touched on this, but what would you like to have known before you made the decision to have a child?
Hmm. You know, well, I don't know. I don't know. That's a tough one. Definitely a tough question. I'm not sure if there's anything that I would have known that would have made it any easier. I mean, I'm still in it, so it's not like I'm done. The jury's still out.
Yeah,
But yeah, no, I don't even know if there's really one piece of information that really. I mean, I think like what you said, and I think what a lot of people fail to realize is the impact that a parent, and a father has on children.
yeah,
It's not just feed them, clothe them, and keep them alive. Like you said, like the things you do, the things you say will have a lasting effect on your kids. Well into their, like you said, 70s, 80s. One of the things I had issues with, and I still do, still working on it, was I have a short temper, um, and I'd be quick to yell. I mean, that's how it was in my house. Puerto Rican household, and you mess something up, and you were getting screamed at from 3 rooms down the way. And that's how I was brought up. So in the beginning, that's how I would react. That's what I knew. But the more I thought about it, and the more I started to learn, I'm realizing, what, this isn't really the way to go about it. Granted, if it's something, like, I'll still yell if they're doing something that I feel is gonna give them some type of harm. And I think that's more out of fear. Um, for little things, like if they're being goofy and knock over a cup of water, something like that, normally I would lose my temper on. Perfect example, my daughter got some new AirPods for her birthday, and she had a little case, and instead of reading the directions, she has popped the case on. Turns out she put it on backwards. So now I gotta try to take the case off without breaking the AirPods. Again, something that I would have flipped my lid on. Oh, you should have read the instructions. What are you
yeah,
doing? You got to slow down. But I took a second. You know what? This is her birthday. She was excited, and immediately I said, Julie, it's okay. I said, next time, read the instructions. I said, let me try to get it apart. And but I had to constantly tell myself, not that big of a deal. Not that big of a deal. It's okay if you constantly have to coach yourself through it. But I was able to fix it. I never yelled, and had I yelled, it would have taken, which was a very nice day for her, and completely ruined it. And
yeah,
that's what I wish I knew from the very beginning. How something very small could impact the entire trajectory of a child.
yeah. I hate to admit that I don't think any of the times that this is important. This is what I'm going to add to what you just said. I hate to admit that I do not believe that any of the times that I I became enraged and I blew my top have had any positive impact in my children's lives or in our relationship. I don't believe any one time that I lost my shit over the AirPods going in backwards have had any positive any positive
reaction.
No, it hasn't had any positive, what is the word I'm looking for? No, it's not, it's nothing good. I do not believe anything good has come from that. For me. I'm just saying that if I could go back and do it differently, what am I saying? What would be the advice for myself to, if all I can do is walk away, I wish I could have walked away, because I don't think that I have done that any of my anger at these children, babies, people. These are people who don't know anything. Any of that anger did any good. The only comfort I find comfort in knowing that I was 90% awesome.
Yeah, but I mean, that's what we could hope for. Yeah, no, I agree.
I feel terrible about it. God, I wish I had been more patient. I don't know what that means, man.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree.
Yeah, I mean, there's, I mean, and it's I don't know why it's so difficult to remember how many of those same identical mistakes we made when we were kids, and how terrible it felt when somebody came down on us so hard over. Yeah, I think patience, tons of patience, man. I mean, like, none of it, I mean, like, what of it matters? I mean, and here's the other question: could I have done it differently? Yeah, of course, right? I mean, like, the idea that I could not have done it in any other way other than screaming at them is ridiculous. Of course I could have. And even if I hadn't, if I could have just walked away, I remember a story by Efrain, great guy, I love him, and he was telling me that the story is something along the lines of, he was in a parking lot, with his boy, and his boy took his hand and I think put it on the side of the car and went like this to the side of the car, and then licked it. And he saw red, right? Efrain saw red, and he's like, I had to walk away and count to 10 because I was gonna kill him. Yeah, I totally, I connected with that. I was like, yeah, I would have berated him. A 6-year-old, please. You gain nothing from it. He gains, your child, 6-year-old child gains absolutely nothing from being treated, badly like that, But
I agree. It's tough. Patience is not an easy virtue to have.
Yeah. Maybe some people have it, man, but I've had to work on it, my whole life.
Yeah, same here. Like I said, even in the process of an actual situation, I have to sometimes constantly coach myself through it, but sometimes you need that self-awareness. You gotta realize what your triggers are and what's gonna put you on a path you don't want to be on, and whatever you got to do to steer away from it. I mean, like you said, if you need to walk away for a minute, cool off and come back, because that nothing's really that important. Nothing's that serious to damage somebody for,
Yeah.
who knows how long.
Yeah.
Like this, I mean, like I said, if they're doing something that's going to cause them harm, that is the one time that I
Yeah.
still have not learned at all to try to stop and talk to them. It's just, if I see they're going to get hurt instantly, and I think that's more of, kind of like to make them stop, like to freeze them for a second before any type of harm comes to them. That's more out of fear than out of
Yeah.
anger.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't know about you, but something that I realized, that I also realized is alcohol. When I'm a happy drunk until I'm not a happy drunk, right? So I'm not a happy drunk forever, no matter what happens. I'm a happy drunk until something just like flips, like like if one of my kids does something that just it was a trigger. The alcohol makes it so there's like no filter, there's no in between, it's just like immediate, I'm immensely angry. So that's why I don't like drinking. It makes me
I just recently myself stopped drinking.
Yeah.
More so because I'm getting up there in age, and last time I had a considerable amount to drink was Christmas Eve.
Yeah.
Had some wine, and literally it was 4 days of recovery, and I don't have 4 days. Being a dad, it's like like I said, I don't like to say no. So it's like I can't be sitting here with a headache and not feeling right. It's just not worth it. Not worth it, man.
Yeah. I remember a number of years ago I had you mentioned this about coming home really tired and still having to deliver basically punch into your like clock in at the home job and I remember there was a time a number of years ago that things were tough at work and I would come home just so absolutely totally drained. And when they when the boys attacked me at the door, what I could do, initially I started saying, just allow me 1 second, let me shower, and then I'm with you 100%. I was able to do that. Initially it was like, let me shower, I know that'll reset my clock, but as I worked on that, like you were saying, as the more you work on things, and as I worked on that, then as soon as I turned off the car and got in, like right as I was transitioning from the car to home, I was able to transition out of whatever I was hating, and just be like super cool, like like coming through the door meant peace, no matter what happened in the past. The past is gone. But yeah, that's so important. Self-awareness, I think, is what you said, right? Yeah. Is there a book that you recommend? Do you remember?
Well, that one book that I always recommend to everybody is The 4 Agreements.
It's a great book.
I love that book, and I tell everybody, if you only going to read the one book, this is the one. Like, you could live your life by that book, and it will be beautifully. I've actually lent it to a few people, and they've told me the same thing. It's a phenomenal book. And then as far as one of the books I've read recently that I enjoyed a lot was Wild at Heart by John Eldridge. That's also a very good book that goes into it's Christianity based. A lot of books I seem to grab lately have been not by design. It's just the books that I have to buying. They're Christianity based books. But it goes into like ideology ideas of why men feel the way they are. It goes all the way back to what happened with Adam and Eve, and how some of our what's the word I'm looking for? Some of our fears and inadequacies, if that's even the right word, but like that feeling of being inadequate, where that stems from in relation to the Bible. So it's a very interesting read. Those 2 books, I think, are very good books for any man, any father to read.
Yeah. The 4 Agreements is a fantastic book. I have a book here I want to show you. Hang on 1 second. Let me stand up for 1 second. Let me get this book. Hold on 1 second. Hold on. Here, this one. Oh well, I got a bunch. I got a bunch of books that I'd like to share with everybody. But this one, this is an easy read and it's kind of fun. This book right here was recommended to me by a very, very good friend. And it's stories, essays on the joys, perils, and humiliations of fatherhood. So the Book of Dads. And so it's a fun book because it's not like, you know, for instance, like this is another amazing book I absolutely love. But you know, it might not be, I don't think it's going to be really, you know, very many people's speed. But this one you can buy, you know, you just read stories about, you know, like basically it's like what you and I are doing, but you know, in book form. You know, it's a fun book for dads. So Mike, so some of the research, I was recently forwarded an email. The University of some professors at the University of Cambridge, they got together. But I want to read this to you because I want to ask you a question. It says, although there are many similarities between fathers and mothers overall, the findings suggest that fathers engage in more physical play, even with the youngest children, opting for activities such as tickling, chasing, and piggyback rides, right? So what I want to ask you, because you have girls, is with my boys, it was really easy to just like, you know, throw them around and, you know, like throw them on the bed and push him and kick him. And like, you know, everyone was laughing and they just like, you know, like, you know, taking out their legs and having them land on the bed and like, and just like, you know, for us, it was like really easy to like get into these wrestling matches when they were tiny. Did you do the same with girls?
Yeah, I did. I mean, my 10-year-old now, not so much, but when she was younger, you know, same thing. You know, tossing them on the bed, tickling. My little one now, my 6-year-old, she's still very hands-on with me. Still, you know, every morning she does not come downstairs unless I carry her down, either carry her or piggyback. You know, if I'm kneeling, she's jumping on my shoulders. But yeah, no, I think that just, you know, natural for the little kids to want to be that, you know, feel that closeness.
Yeah.
I've heard with boys that they tend to I guess test a bit, you know, like try to push to see, you know, if they can overtake dad sometimes, you know, see, because I have a buddy of mine, he got 2 sons. And he said, you know, he would get dad a lot, you know, with they would do like a punching game where they would punch each other in the arm, and his kids would always, you know, wound them up and try to. But I think as my girls get older, I think they tend to, you know, back away from the physical. Like I know my 10-year-old, like I said, not so much physical anymore. You know, I'll try to tickle her in the morning to wake her up, and I'll get smacked around or I get kicked away. She's not really feeling it at all. So I think eventually my 6-year-old will probably go into that same. You know, I think as they get old, I read a book recently by John Eldridge called "You Have What It Takes," and it's actually a smaller book from Wild at Heart. Like the ideas are similar, but it says that in every young boy's life, his desire is to be adventurous and always asking his father, does he measure up? Is he good enough? Is he man enough? Um, Whereas with the girls, it's separate. You know, the girls they'll put the dresses on, and so it's like, oh, dad, look at me. Am I pretty? Am I cute? And I know with my girls, I do notice that. You know, whenever they get dolled up, they come and they'll just stand there, wait till I say something. You know, and God forbid if I'm into something and I don't say something, the 6-year-old she'll let me have it immediately. Oh, well, I don't look cute, daddy. My outfit. So I do see that. I think as they get older, they'll move more towards that side of it. You know, not so much the physical side, but yeah, no, definitely when they were small though, I would play with both of them all the time, tickling them, you know, play with them. Yeah.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, no, and it's interesting because like, you know, all of the research basically shows that it's one of father's major contributions. It may not seem like a lot, but apparently it makes a huge. It says here, this seems to help children learn to control their feelings. It may also make them better at regulating their own behavior later on as they enter settings where those skills are important, especially school. So, but previous generations were not, and I think maybe 1 or 2 generations ago, the fathers didn't, get down on the ground and, come home with, in their suits, you used to go to work in a suit, right, or whatever, or jacket. And then we don't hear a lot of stories of grandpa, getting down on the ground and getting, doing some tumbling with their children. It used to be different. It's changed, and I think that's why these conversations are important. Things have changed. I mean, a lot in recently, right? Especially since women joined the workforce and greater equality. It's like, well, what is it that we're doing? If everyone is working, then how do you? What about this is an important one. Discipline, right? Disciplining. How do you? What do you think about that? How do you do that with your wife? How do you do it yourself? What do you think about it?
Yeah, I mean that's one area where sometimes we tend to disagree, and not necessarily disagree, but we're not always on the same page. Sometimes it's accidentally, sometimes she'll say something because she's a teacher, so she's off with them in the summer. So she'll tell them, oh, that's it, no more snacks the rest of the day. I'll come home, she'll go take a shower, and the kids know I don't know that information, so they start asking me, and I'm like, yeah, go ahead, and then she comes on, she's like, oh, I said no more snacks, and so we differed there a little bit. I mean, disciplining is definitely a tough situation, man. It's hard to to figure out exactly what works sometimes. I mean, my kids now they're at the point where they have the devices, so sometimes we'll punish them with no screen time,
Right.
Or no TV, something like that. But it's definitely hard. I mean, we try to be on the same page. A lot of things. She's way better than I am with communicating. My wife, she'll be like, oh, we need to talk. We need to figure something out. I tend by nature to just kind of see a problem, attack it, and okay, this is my solution. I don't know, growing up, like I said, I had 2 brothers. So there was 3 of us, and both my brothers were a bit of, troublemakers. I'm the youngest of 3. So the other 2 required a lot more attention from my parents. So, inadvertently, it left me kind of, I don't want to say I was out in the streets, but I was kind of, to fend for myself, and I was pretty good as a kid. So my parents didn't really have to put so much attention into me. And I think because of that, now I have that in my mind was, all right, well, all I have is me. I have to figure this out, solve it, and move on. And so that tends to sometimes give us problems. She'll text me at work about something, and I'll think about it, and then I'll come home and just lay down the law. And she'd be like, well, no, I texted you so we could discuss it, not that you come home and decide what the punishment was going to be. So that's definitely something that I do need to work on.
Yeah.
But that's that's more of a personal issue. But yeah, no, I mean, but it's definitely hard to try to discipline and be on the same page. Definitely.
That I was thinking about that question myself that I asked you earlier. What would you like to have known? And I think that what I think I would like to have known before I had children was how difficult it was going to be to co-parent. Mm-hmm. I think that if you before, like, when you meet a girl or your partner, the person you're gonna have raise children with, you gotta start having some conversation. You gotta have conversations around, how are we gonna handle certain situations? And I know that you're not gonna be able to cover all your bases, but there should be what, what kind of a parent are you going to be? What kind of a parent am I going to be? How are we going to deal with differences, right? Disagreements on what to do next with this child. It kind of sneaks up on you because the child is born and nothing really happens, and then they start, then they stand up and start walking. All right, so now, right now both of you start thinking, now we have to say things to it. Now we have to teach, right? Now we have to teach, and we have to teach, this child to not shove the fork into the outlet, right? Or to not run with something because they're gonna fall and stab themselves with it. But how you do it can be vastly different between. And the other day I was having a conversation, and it really, this is just one of thousands of conversations that we should have with each other before having children, right? I think maybe if there is a lesson is how much can you address, how much information can you tackle before you have a child?
Yeah, like you said, there's so much. I mean, you may tackle a million things and not one of them ever come up. You know, and it's amazing too how you could have, like, my two kids, they couldn't be more different from each other.
Yeah.
And they're literally growing up in the same house with the same set of rules and guidelines, and it baffles me how different that they could be. It's almost like, like I said earlier, you can't change anything. You can guide, you can be that guiding hand, but at the end of the day, they're gonna be with this, and you just hope that you guide them enough that they keep their personality, but they're good people.
Yeah.
And ultimately, that's our job as parents, is to make it that we no longer have a job, right? I mean, that's the goal. The goal is that when they get a certain age, you want them to still come to you, but you want them to come to you because they want to, not because they feel they have to anymore. I hear that a lot. That's our job as a parent, is to make our job obsolete.
Yeah. What does that mean? How can one know that that moment of where you're disciplining is aligned with the idea that the way that you execute is going to help ensure that they don't need you later?
Yeah. Well, that's the tough part. That's the tough part. It's one of the things I've listened to recently. The idea of with disciplining. And I don't really know how to change it. But one of the topics that this particular podcast brought up was that to discipline, what's the word he used? Basically, to discipline with the idea of, if they do or don't do this, they're gonna be in trouble. Because you said they're gonna be in trouble, is really only changing their actions, so to speak. So basically, they know, okay, well, I can't do this in front of Dad,
Yeah.
but when you're gone, they're still gonna do it. So the idea was, you don't want to change the behavior, you want to change their heart. He said, so basically, you don't want to change what they're doing, you want to change the reason why they're doing it. As far as the answer of how to do that,
Yeah.
I couldn't tell you. I could not tell you. I mean, the particular podcast was religious based, so a lot of it was based off of prayer and things like that. I don't know if that's necessarily the audience you have, so I won't get too much into that. But I mean, the idea, regardless with the religion or not, is pretty much the same. The idea is to have them have a good set of values and not necessarily be afraid of what Dad's going to do if they do something.
Oh my God, no, forget it. Yeah, I've talked about this before. I mean, I remember early on, the way that my wife grew up, and she learned what I'm going to share with you. She learned, growing up, but when my kids were really little, when my wife one day said to me, she said, I told the boys that when you came home, you were going to yell at them. And I was like, whoa, don't ever say that again. I don't want my children afraid of me. I'm already scary enough that I don't need you threatening them with me. But going back to this idea about you said, do the job so that, so you don't, right? Teach him so that, let's say it again. Teach him so you don't have a job later. How does that go?
Yeah. But basically, it was our job as a parent is to make our job obsolete.
Okay.
You know.
Yeah. And so the question becomes, what does that mean, right? What does that mean? Because I think it sounds like a cool thing to say, but how can we put it into practice? So what comes to mind is, I think it might connect to what you were saying about their personalities. If you're curious about their personalities and your parenting, and when you're teaching, or because when you're disciplining, right, which means to teach, right? When you teach a lesson through discipline, you're doing it aware of who they are. So you're not dropping the hammer, across, the board, right? It's not everybody. This isn't for everybody. That's what it is, right? So, so you're saying that they're both different. So let's go with the 6-year-old. You're going to say something different to her than you are going to say to the 11-year-old. And it's going to be different because the personality is different. So these become very, very, conversations that are very tailored. So maybe the way that you, what's the job? The job is teaching. So children need to know it. They need to know everything. We need to teach them everything. Clearly, the older they get, the less they need to know from us, right? So maybe, but okay. So maybe this is it. So maybe when we are curious about who they are and we teach them as individuals rather than as individuals, we teach them for them rather than for us, right? Like you were saying, well, what is it that we're teaching when we punish? Are we teaching them that they shouldn't do X in front of us? Or when we punish, are we teaching them because they misunderstood a certain situation and we're trying to explain it to them in a way in which they can? So right?
Yeah, no, definitely. That's something I've recently started doing, more so with the 6-year-old because she's a lot tougher. And I noticed what was happening. And she used to get a brunt of the yelling because she was very tough. But I noticed what was happening. She was taking that very personally, and I don't know how much of it is like actually feeling, and how much of it is her trying to manipulate the situation in her favor. But sometimes she would get to it and be like, oh, well, I feel like I'm not wanted here. And so I started realizing, okay, I need to sit her down and actually have discussions with her.
Yeah.
So one of the issues we have is, she likes to take her sister's things and tease her. She'll take it and run away with it, or she'll mess it up and then after the fact realize, oh, I messed this up and we can't fix it now. So, she used to just get yelled at and, don't touch your sister's things. But then I started realizing she was taking it almost like I was favoring the sister over her. So I would have to now, like I said, I would actually sit her down and explain to her, this is why you got in trouble. This is why you shouldn't do this. Put her in her sister's shoes to try to teach her, empathy towards, well, this is how your sister feels. You need to understand that this is what you. But there was a lot more to it. But like you said, with my oldest, I don't always have to do that. She seems to kind of get it quicker than my little one does. But yeah, that's what I think is important. And one of the things I struggle with, is knowing when to kind of let them figure it out themselves. Because as a dad, especially of girls, like, my thing is I want them to know no matter what, like, daddy's gonna save you. Like, if you break something, there have been times that I've left my house to go all the way back to my parents' house to pick up a doll that they forgot and they really wanted, and but then I'm not really helping them learn how to cope with things. It's kind of instilling that in their mind of, oh, it doesn't matter, daddy's gonna take care of it. But that's me personally. That's my biggest challenge recently, is knowing where I need to draw that line. Whereas, well, you know what? As much as I want to always fix everything, I can't. I do. They won't have the skills to fix it when I'm not around. And that's kind of where or at least that's kind of how I took that statement of, we need to raise them to the point where we're no longer needed. Where they know, okay, well, this is how I need to handle this. Whereas if we always just handle it, how are they going to learn? I mean, they could learn from us telling them, obviously, and we could sit down and have those conversations and hope that they get through their heads. But that's definitely my biggest struggle right now, is finding that fine line of, daddy's a superhero and I have to be a hero in my own sense.
Yeah, I think that's the answer, Mike. I think you got there. All right. So you said teach them so that you don't. What is it? Say it again. Say it again. Teach them so you lose the job. What is it?
We have to raise them so our job is obsolete. Basically, we're making if we do our job good enough, it's no longer needed.
Okay. But okay. So there it is. Right. If you do your job well enough, you will no longer be needed. Right. And the question became, what the hell does that mean? But I think we're getting closer, because you just said it. I think you just said it all. I think there's a bunch of stuff in here that answers this question finally, because I was bothered by it. I couldn't figure out, what does it mean. And you said it's something along the lines of, I have to know when to stop. Meaning, what's the least I have to do here, right? What's the least, or what's the, yeah. What can I contribute to this situation that is missing because they don't know what it could be because of their age, right? So what is the least involvement that is required of me here right now, right? So that they can then on their own take the following steps, right? Figure it out on their own, right? So that's it. That's how this works. What's the least that what is the least that you have to do in any one of these situations? So one is you're present. Two is, well, what is it that you actually need from me? You could say to the child, well, what is it that you actually need from me? Because, and this is important, I think there's something that you say made me think of, we often jump to conclusions, right? So you're I think classic male behavior is we like to fix things, right? My wife I had to teach myself this, right? Like initially after I got married, my wife would come to talk to me about something and I'd be like, let's figure it out. No, she just wanted to talk, right? And so I had to learn. I'm like, I'm trying to fix her problems and she doesn't want me to do that. She just wants me to listen. So sometimes what we think of as a problem isn't the problem. So when we decide we're going to fix this, maybe that's one way to do it. Maybe that's a way that we could catch ourselves. If you're thinking to yourself, I can totally fix this right now, so I can get on with my day, you might want to step back.
Yeah, I agree with that statement. Definitely.
Especially you. I mean, you're living with 3 women, right? I mean, that's.
And I got a dog that's a female, so.
Maybe we'll edit that out. No, we're definitely leaving that in. You're in trouble for saying that. I want some hate mail coming. Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting, Mike. I think that's good stuff, man. What is the least that I have to do here? Because you're right. I think that sometimes, I mean, I I can easily look back and say that many times, um, the reason I flew off the handle was because I needed to fix that thing immediately. It's got to be fixed now and forever, and that's unrealistic. It's ridiculous and unrealistic. You're a fool for thinking that way.
Yeah. Yeah, no, a lot of times anger comes from that, inability to control. And that's what it boils down to. You want to control the situation, you want to
Yeah,
control the person, and that's where the anger comes from. And
yeah,
once you realize, you know what, I can't control this, I can guide it. It helps a little bit. It helps
yeah,
subside that a little.
yeah, yeah. That's right. We have this. We do feel this need to control, and when we can't, it's very upsetting.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it definitely is.
yeah, yeah. I have conversations with my family sometimes when things, when something breaks, right? Not physical, but literal, like not literal, but figuratively, something within our relationship sort of takes a weird turn, and some of the comments that I make, that are very black and white, um, come from fears, right? Of this fear of being out of control, this fear that things are going to break, the fear that things are not going to continue as well. Like some of the times that I say the craziest things to my family and to my children, especially the oldest is the one that can like set me off the most. I fear losing them. I feel even though they're tiny, even though they're 12 and 13, I'm like, but like when I hear, I I participate in this. I facilitate a webinar with fathers every other Wednesday. Anyway, and I hear them talking about, how like some of them will talk, will tell these horrendous stories about their relationship with their teens, and and then when my children say things that make me think, well, this would be the path that would take us to where that guy is. I become afraid,
Yeah.
and I say crazy shit because I'm afraid. I don't want to lose my kids, and of course later, my wife will, either she'll say something, or I'll think of it, and I'll go and I'll speak with them, and I'll say, look, this is what's happening. I'm afraid of losing you. I'm afraid of losing us. You know, and it's weird. It's weird because like you can fly off the handle. I can fly off the handle and feel so much anger, but at the same time, I'm like, I'm telling him this. I'm telling him this. I'm saying, I'll take a bullet for you, like literally, like not figuratively. Like if someone was gonna get shot, I'd take the bullet. But yet, how can I be so ridiculously angry right now? Right? It's such a right. It's such a weird thing going on in our heads, right? Like I can take a bullet for this child, but I can also berate him for for dropping his ice cream.
Yeah, yeah. When you think about it like that, it does seem very, very odd.
Yeah,
Yeah.
fears, like all these, like these are like a lot of things are weird triggers. Like if you know like if your dad came down hard on you when you were a little kid because you dropped the ice cream, or you dropped the water on the table and he flew off the handle, and here you find yourself doing the same thing. You don't even know why, but that's what was modeled, and maybe like somewhere in your head that's what you do, right?
Yeah. So that's what that's what you were brought up seeing, and then you figure, okay, this is the right way to do it.
At
I mean,
least,
I did that fine, right?
yeah, and not just not the right way to do it, but the only one that you have a single go-to, and that's
Yeah.
what was done to you, right? And I think that the key there then becomes make sure that you know how to apologize. Because my dad didn't do that, right? Huh?
No, you're right. You're right. I mean, for a long time, I wasn't the greatest with that either. My way of apologizing was just being nice again. But no, you're right. It's very important, to come out and say it. I was wrong. I overreacted. I should not have behaved that way. And I think that's very important. As much as it sucks, because like you said earlier, as parents, kids expect us to be right, to know how to do things. Like we're their hero. So for us to swallow all that in and be like, well, now I gotta go tell them that I screwed up. Like it's tough to do. It's not easy. Definitely not easy, man.
It gets easier though. I've always been pretty good about saying I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, it does. It definitely does. I had that recently, this school year when both my daughters started going to Lincoln School. I shifted my schedule so I could bring them into school, and I was always sleeping for like the last possible minute that I could. And then if one thing went wrong, I would blow up. Oh, wait, we gotta go, hurry up. And after about, I don't know, maybe about 2 or 3 weeks of this, I realized, I said, you know what? Like, they're kids. They're not supposed to have their shit together. So I got them together and I apologized to them. And I told them, I said, listen, we're going to try to do things a certain way, but I'm getting up early. And I did. I started from getting up at 6:30. I got up at 4:30. I got up at 4:30, and that's when I started reading more. I would have my coffee. I read. So by the time I woke them up, I was already done. I did my exercise. I had my reading, had my coffee, and it was pretty much all my attention was on them. And let me tell you, we didn't have any issues after that.
Yeah. That's amazing.
But I had to. Like I said, you have to swallow your pride and realize, okay, maybe they did screw up. I can't change that. I can change what I'm doing, and you got to make the change. You have to admit it. You have to, like you said, you have to learn to apologize. You have to admit when you're wrong.
Yeah. Well, because it's behavior you want to teach.
Yeah.
Right. You're talking about, how do you get rid of your job? Teach how to apologize. That's one, right? That's on that list of things to teach, so that you don't have a job later on.
Yep.
Yeah, no, and you want to remember that way. Like when you're an old man, you want your kids, you want to hear your kids when they're out, outside having a beer with their friends. Yeah, my dad, he could be a dick sometimes, but he'd come back and apologize. He'd come back and apologize, and he would acknowledge that he was wrong, and that's cool, And now they do the same thing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just going back to the transparency, letting them know, like it's okay if you screw up, everybody does it. It's okay.
Yeah. And look, and the more you do it, the better you get at it. Not just apologizing, but also sharing additional information. Like it's not just saying, look, I'm sorry, but it's saying, I'm sorry, and I've realized now that the reason I did it was because of this fear, like I was telling you about my son. I'm afraid of losing you, and so I behaved badly, but I'm afraid. What am I going to do?
Yep.
I'm not justifying. I'm not saying what am I going to do? I'm justifying it. No, I'm saying I'm obviously going to try never to do it again, but I wasn't justifying it. That came out wrong. No, I'm definitely not going to do it again. But that fear is what I'm saying, that it's just like, maybe as I talk about it, and during the apology, I have an opportunity to reflect and maybe not do it again, and hopefully recognize that things are going to feel a little like there's going to be they're going to behave in certain ways that where I might get triggered again, that this might be something that will turn into something big, but at the same time, maybe it won't. And so maybe that's the reason to not be afraid. And like you said, the one thing that you've been, I don't know if I've mentioned this, but that you've been saying for since the beginning, which is hugely important, and that everyone should really listen to this, is that you really do only have control over one person in this whole exercise. You have control over one single person, man. One single person, and that's you. It's just you, man. You cannot control your wife, you cannot control your children, you have no control over what they do or what they say, but you have control over, and you may not have control over emotions. They may arise. Yeah, you may get angry naturally, and maybe you have a reason to be angry, but what you do with that anger is the only thing you have control over, right? Your actions, what, right? The way that your behaviors post your emotions.
Yeah, the way you perceive things, the way you react to it. I read I'm actually in the middle of reading a book called Meditations by Marcus Aurelius,
Mm-hmm.
a Roman emperor, I believe, or Greek. I don't remember exactly, but he was actually the father from the movie Gladiator. That was actually a real character. I wasn't aware of that. A friend of mine put me on to him, but I just started reading this book, and it's about Stoicism, which was I guess a form of philosophy back in that time. And the one thing I read that was very interesting was it was saying that the idea behind there was three different uh, aspects that I went by. I don't remember them all. I just kind of started getting into it. But one thing that did trigger my brain and it stuck there was the way you perceive a situation is very big. And the example they give is, let's say you come home and your house is on fire. The one true perception is your house is on fire. That is
Right.
the one factual truth. Now, if you come home and your perception is my house is on fire, this is a terrible tragedy upon my life. Now that's your perception. That is not the factual case that happened. It was a very interesting way to put forth the idea of perspective. And the way the Stoics kind of followed was the original one, which is just kind of take things as they are. Like, this is the fact of it, and that's all there is to it. I took it as a very interesting take on perspective, how you could see something and, you could completely spin it to crush your entire world. When reality is just, it is what it is. It's
Yeah.
just it's a fate.
Yeah. No, that's good stuff, man. And it's important to yeah, it's important to remember how how to that we must analyze what we think is true, um depending on how we feel about it, right? Like you say, yeah, the fact of the matter is the house is on fire.
Yeah,
What does it mean though, right? What does it mean? And then the other thing, I think a really cool thing about the house being on fire is you don't know what is going to come of it. You don't. I mean, and this is what's interesting, because I think, we can make this blanket statement that almost anybody who says we'll see what happens after the house burns down is going to come out of that experience a better person. I think we can make that statement. Like, you will have not only. So imagine if your house is on fire, so now you're angry with your wife, and you're angry with your kids, and you're angry with yourself, and you're angry with the world. We lost everything. Everything's lost. What a nightmare. Your daughters don't have you to support them, right? No one can count on you. Your wife can't count on you because you're a freaking mess, right? You're missing out on the opportunity of being, a better man than you were just a little while ago, because you can hold your own, and you can also hold others. And who knows, maybe you end up with a nicer house than before, whatever the situation, right? I think this. I think that the problem with not doing what you're saying, which is to be more flexible. The problem with not being more flexible in our own lives, because really we don't have control over it. We don't have control over anything. We there's this perception that we do, right? But the problem is that then you miss opportunities to learn. That's why it has to be embraced. That's why when a child does something, it's best not to pounce on them, because once we do that, once we crush it right there, then we don't know what else was happening, what else was going on. We make these assumptions. We know exactly what's happening right here, and we're gonna put the hammer down, and it's gonna end. But the reality is, if we were a little more flexible, and if we were thinking, what's the least I can do here? one of those things would be, one of the least things to do here is to ask questions. Hey, what is happening here, right? Why did you take your sister's toy? How about we talk about that? Why don't I buy you ice cream? Let's go get some ice cream and you tell me why you took yours. And I am 100% certain that when you take her for ice cream to find out why she took the toy, you're going to find something out that you didn't know.
Yep. Yep. I had a friend recently tell me, and it wasn't even directed towards being a father in the conversation. We were actually talking about work. And I had an issue with one of my coworkers had gotten upset with the manager and they got into a shouting match. And one of the things he told me, which could kind of, it goes hand in hand with anything. And he said, once you start to scream and act irate, people are no longer listening to what you're saying.
Yeah.
They're seeing your act. And I think that could easily be applied to the same thing. If you go in, like you said, and you just want to smash it down and you guns blazing, and at that point, your kid probably isn't even listening to the word we're saying.
Yeah.
They're just hearing noise and they're seeing, the actions and they're just shutting down. And like you said, you take an opportunity to learn and to teach and you just threw it in the garbage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We know, the research shows a child is not listening when you're screaming at them or when they're screaming. No one is listening. It is the worst time to try to teach anybody anything when their tops are blown. Yeah. Yeah, it's a good thing to remember. Yeah, because when you see red, don't try to teach. That's a lesson right there. If you see red,
Yep.
walk away. Don't try to teach. Right?
Yeah, slow it down.
Yeah, because no one's gonna listen then. The cool thing also about instead of trying to crush it or to fix an issue with your kids, and when you invite them for ice cream or whatever, right, in whatever form you take the time to listen to them, is you're teaching that which you're doing at that moment, which is let's talk about it, which is let's communicate what may be happening, right? Especially because, and I think this is something that I say often because this is what I do daily, which is children are highly emotional. That's how they function. They just don't have the logical brain that adults do, and they won't for yours won't for decades, and mine won't for decades, right? And we teach children logic. So when they're highly emotional over something that to an adult doesn't make sense, it's because they're not there yet. That part of the brain hasn't settled in, right? So when they're highly emotional and we begin to scream at them, well, no, there's no good correlation. What are you doing? You're not doing anything. You're accomplishing zero. So you have to, if they're highly emotional and they're very excited, then you got to give them a little time to relax. You got to help them relax, regulate, and then once they're calm, then you can have the conversation. And so what you taught them, right? You taught them to do that, right? That's another lesson. Which again, if we begin to scream or if we want to spank, or it's to the corner with you, and if we say mean things to them, no lessons. You're teaching absolutely nothing. In fact, what you're doing is the complete opposite of what you've been saying. Rather than getting yourself, rid of the job, you're extending their dependency on you because you haven't taught them anything.
Yeah, you taught them to be afraid of what you're going to do. That's what you taught them.
Not independence, but rather you're teaching dependence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, definitely.
All right, Mike. I think that's it, man. We covered an insane amount of ground.
I think we did. I enjoyed this very much so, man. I appreciate you inviting me on here, Ricardo.
Yeah, man. Yeah, Mike, I appreciate you having the conversation with me. Thank you so much. It's definitely been a lot of fun.
Same
We'll,
here.
we'll have to do it again.
Definitely, man. Let me know.
All right.
All
Have
right,
a good
man.
night.